It's Bristol, baby.
It's one of the first questions we're always asked about drag racing. How did funny cars get their name?
Of course, I had to ask that same question. And the first funny cars were built in the mid-60s, I found out, and they were nicknamed funny cars because the rear wheels had been moved forward on the chassis and the rear tires were oversized compared to stock. So the cars looked funny compared to the other dragsters.
And one of the first funny car drivers was Shirl Greer of Kingsport. Recently, he took me on a trip down memory lane. It's one thing to be part of drag racing history, quite another to make it. Shirl Greer has lived life in the fast lane, collecting trophies and checks as he burned up tracks throughout the Southeast. He was also the first man to take a trip down Thunder Valley. Greer, who is originally from Georgia but has lived in Kingsport for most of his life, was a fixture on the drag racing circuit in the 1960s and 70s. He raced in the old factory experimental class. Experimental, meaning there were no rules. So Greer made up a few of his own. You realized early on, the more weight you had over the rear wheels, the faster this car would go.
That's true. Yes, sir. I moved the rear seat plumb over the rear end. Instead of sitting right here and driving it like you normally do, I put the rear end right over the rear end and built a roll cage like you see right here now in '66.
Now, how much of a difference did that make?
It made a lot of difference. The car would run, it finally wound up running 170 miles an hour and a quarter, and I think the closest thing to me about 160.
The other drivers noticed the changes, and soon everyone was talking about the funny-looking car, and a racing legend was born.
My car did look kind of funny, and they made a lot of fun of it, but when it got to the getting paid, they didn't laugh too much.
It became so popular that in 1974, the NHRA made funny car an official class, and Greer won the first ever championship. His Chain Lightning Mustang survived a fire to earn just enough points to edge out Don the Snake Prudhomme. Today, a replica of that car sits in the BMS Museum, and Greer still looks like he could take it down the track.
And you just mail it right to the floor, and it's direct drive. You don't have to do nothing but just hang on and try to keep between the lines.
It's a far cry from the machines that drivers like John Force have today.
This car here has about 4,000 horsepower, and one like John Force runs got about 8,000. Of course, I'm not trying to run with them boys. I'm just doing exhibition runs.
But that tells you how this sport has changed and how the cars have changed, because a funny car in the 1970s was probably going 230 or 40 miles an hour, and now they're going to 330 miles an hour.
That's about what it is right now. Yes, sir.
So in 30 years, they've gained 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And almost twice as much horsepower.
You got that right.
This is the fuel pump here. It runs directly off the camshaft.
But if Greer's son Brian has his way, it will soon be racing on the Nostalgia Tour. That's right, many of the old machines of the past run exhibitions throughout the country. There's just one problem: money.
Don Garlis told me when I was a real little kid, he said, you got to learn how to hate money if you want to be a drag racer. So it's cubic dollars more so today than it is cubic inches.
Greer isn't in it for the money, but the memory.
I hope that people remember everything that he gave up for the sport, and we just want to give him a good show.
It's time for us to blast down the track.
Don't forget to support your local bracket racers and come out to Thunder Valley and see the best of the NHRA.
And most importantly, shut up and drive.
Let's do it.